Hi, everybody. My name is Marielle Buckley. I'm a country singer-songwriter from Calgary, Alberta. Thanks for taking part in Music Calgary's SoundOff Summit, the digital strategies, taking place online from Mohkinstsis in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. So before we begin, it's important to acknowledge, of course, that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, the Kainaiwa, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all the people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region. For future events, make sure you follow Music Calgary on social media, sign up as a member on their website for the newsletter, and for more programming updates. And I just want to say, I know it's real tough right now to get much of anything done in regards to a music career, but if you're showing up today, you're showing up for yourself, and that's a big win, so give yourself a pat on the back. Now the moment you've all been waiting for, please enjoy the riveting discussion of DSPs and playlisting hosted by Adam Bentley of Auteur Research. Take it easy.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Adam Bentley, and I'm hosting a panel today for SoundOff around digital streaming platforms and specifically playlisting and different ways playlisting can work. I run a company called Auteur Research. I've been doing that since 2009. Our focus originally was online press only, and then it moved into a little bit into the streaming world. And now we also do digital marketing and project management. So that's me. Today we also have Jason and Nicolas joining us, and maybe Jason, if you wanted to introduce yourself and let everybody know, what you're up to these days.
Cool. Hey, I'm Jason. It's Saturday evening here in Cape Town, South Africa. I've been playing with my kids all day, and now my wife's in charge. So thank you for this opportunity to take a break. I too have been doing this since about 2009. So I started a music blog, actually it was 2008, I think, called Indie Shuffle. We're still running today, a rare breed, if you will, in the year 2021, but we're still going. And then in 2015, I also started another website called Submit Hub. And the goal of Submit Hub was to solve a problem I had with my music blog, Indie Shuffle, where we were getting too many emails from folks like Adam, about 300 emails per day. And it sort of sucked the joy out of music blogging. And at the same time, we were steadily losing our revenue stream and considering other options. So I thought, heck, this is sort of a last ditch attempt to try build another business. So I started Submit Hub, and it worked. So here I am. It's done well enough that I've been invited to this panel.
And Nicolas, maybe if you'll give us a little bit of your background.
Hi there. So I'm Nicolas, in some cottage up north of Montreal right now. On Saturday also. Normally on a weekend shouldn't be working, but this sounded like fun, so I said, okay, let's join in. So basically, I've been working in the music industry for 35 years now. So majority of my time has been spent with distribution companies, mostly indie distribution companies, from Cargo Records back in the late 80s, 90s, Fusion 3 in the later on, and recently at Distribution Select, which was probably the most corporate organization I was with. And now I'm heading the Believe Canada distribution side of the business. So I've had, for the last 2 years, I've been involved in a company that's actually dealing with growth rather than decreasing revenues and all that, because streaming is up. It's all good and fun. It's like, let's say, a new challenge that came in right at the right time for me. So that's where my expertise comes from. Indie distribution, like the basic, the original foundation of where I'm coming from is a DIY approach. I come from a alternative, let's say punk rock background. That's my source, my inspiration. It has evolved with my taste in music, with the genres I've been involved with on a distribution level, to this actual world we're in, where it's all about a much more open and more healthy environment at a certain level from my experience. So yeah, that's where it's exciting times, at least on the Canadian side of our company. Because Believe has been around for 15 years. It started up as an European company based in France. That's where the HQ is, and has branched out worldwide with offices Japan, and recently opened in Africa, in India, South America. There's offices, about 333 offices around the world. 2,500 employees, growing from a tech company to a distribution service type of company. So with a lot of various offerings and with local expertise on a global with a global view. That's the bulk of it.
Very cool. Well, thank you both for joining me today. And I guess most of our focus is going to be on playlisting. And I think I'm just going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of playlists. So you have your editorial playlists that Spotify curates and often goes through distribution. But there's also a whole world of user-generated playlists. And I think that's maybe where we can start and talk about the value of those playlists and why those playlists have funneled into the ecosystem of streaming over the last few years, and why they're tracked even by Spotify. Now, I guess maybe Jason, since you originally started with the blogs being the foundation of Submit Hub, what made you see the value in user-generated playlisting to add that to the platform?
I was following the market. Yeah, I don't think I specifically look at them and said, wow, we really need these on here because they're so valuable. But I could tell that the trend within the market was that there was a strong desire to be featured by Spotify playlists. I knew that the editorial side was very difficult to crack. And so, yeah, there was this rising demand for folks to get playlisted somehow. And in many cases, that's where the independent playlisters stepped up to what's it called? The plate. Stepped up to the plate to sort of help independent artists get the features that they were looking for on Spotify. And no one fully understands the algorithms, and they're constantly changing. But there's always been some understanding that being picked up by a number of smaller independent playlists, possibly having a good saves to listens ratio and whatnot, can feed into the third type of Spotify playlist, which is the algorithmic one. And as you start growing within that, then next thing you know, you might get noticed by the editorial side. So I think a lot of people use independent playlists as a strategy for growing their profile on Spotify. And at the same time, there are independent playlisters who've done really well with specific search terms, like tech house, for example. You search for something like that, and it's going to be an independent playlister that shows up top. That said, Spotify's done everything in their power to try and squash independent playlisters and make sure that they're not getting much focus and attention. I'll give you one example where Spotify has created an official playlist called Indie Shuffle to make sure that when people search for Indie Shuffle, it shows their playlist rather than our playlist.
Right.
So they keep an eye on the search terms and make sure that they're filling them themselves so that they have complete control and domination over the market. So personally, these days, I'm a bit of a skeptic, actually, about the power of independent playlists. I think they can be used well strategically, but the overall approach that many artists take, which is a broader spray and pray and just get on as many playlists as you can, may not actually have the positive upside that many of them are hoping for.
the same impact? Like I remember in 2015 when we were still kind of figuring out what was going on with streaming, and you would go to your homepage and it would have independent playlists on your homepage. And now, unless that playlist you have saved or you've made it, there's no chance it's going to be there. And I guess with the distro side, when you're prepping a track and you're getting ready to send a track over to the DSPs and to Spotify, does previous history or with user-generated playlisting, or with the knowledge that user-generated playlisting is going to happen, does that help that pitch?
That might be a better question for Nicolas than me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the pitch and the setup, that's where our marketing team gets involved, and they would be better placed than myself to talk about that, is what's presented. So what we've seen from Spotify, to name them first, is that they're going to look at how what the evolution is of the stream, what the stats are always before they go to the editorial. They won't say that straight up, that they will look only at your stats and only at let's say the how organic it's happening. But currently what they are doing, and it's with all the DSPs, they're cracking down on anything that seems slightly suspicious, because they're seeing a lot of it that is wonky, okay? So they're cracking down heavily this year, more than they were previous years. So anything that's out of the ordinary, that's not organic, that doesn't seem naturally, has a natural growth, they have the tools to point out and kill it. And that's the end of that career right there, right? General warning on because there are a lot of services out there that are, bizarre, to say the least. So for artists, it's easy. It's an easy. You can get easily trapped into some services that are going to be really detrimental to your career in the end.
You were definitely seeing that, where these third-party playlisters were adding tracks
on the UGCs.
Oh, I think we got a delay.
Yeah, no, with what we call not widget streams, basically. So there's a lot of that happening. They are cracking down on that. So I do agree with what you're saying. They're on the Spotify side, they are playing the game that they want everything to go through them and to have that kind of monopoly, which they basically do have right now. But at the same time, there is that activity, that parallel activity that's being monitored more closely than it was before. It's been an issue, and it still is. And I think they're finding ways to catch them really quick. We've seen recently this year, okay, this is wrong, and there's nothing we can say with it. So on the setup, and what was the original question on the pitching side, on when we're presenting the titles? The way we're set up, it's all up to the label or the artist to bring in all the marketing tools and elements for our weekly newsletters to the DSPs. We send them. We make individual newsletters to every DSPs. Apple, Amazon, all of them, they get a separate newsletter from us, because we know different tastes, different platforms. So we try to tailor make them for their own use. And from there, it's really based on what's been presented to us, where our marketing team will, what we've discovered is that depending on the strategy, if there's a strategy, if there's no actual strategic plan, where if there's not an album, an EP, or an end result with a proper rollout in the presentation, in the initial presentation of any project, it's not going to be looked at as much as if it's a single-based thing with no actual plan. What we discovered also is that a local push, and that's why we're structured. That's why I believe is structured like that, with local teams in each countries to push to the local DSPs. We found that these conversation between Spotify Canada, they have the means to push it to their colleagues in the other countries. So we're not that it was meant to be like that, but our setup is is very close to how they function also, with our own things. The idea is to get the maximum visibility you can on any given release out of the, 60,000 daily that they ingest?
A day, yeah, right now.
So, yeah, it's there's that on the, and for for us as a whole, like all the activity that they have, that an artist will have on YouTube, on TikTok or any UGC is being used. It's been leveraged for the end result, for the pay, because that's where the paycheck is at the end. It's on these playlists. So target the right ones, and follow each project with the proper guidance as much as we can. So.
Totally. And you were mentioning playlists driven by, in a lot of ways, illegitimate plays, driven by bots in a lot of cases. And I remember when I was first personally researching into these user-generated playlists in 2016, and someone said, "Hey, I'll add you to this playlist for $5." And I went, well, $5, I guess we can see what this is all about. And then these plays boomed out of nowhere. And I went, well, that's cool, but where'd these come from? I can't see a country or a location.
No.
And it instantly was one of those things where I was like, okay, we can't go after these playlists. Eventually they're going to get caught. It did take many years for Spotify to have a system in place to actually stop this from happening, but a lot of tracks have been removed. So I guess, Jason, this kind of segues into how you built up your contacts in your database, and how do you monitor that what they're doing is legitimate? I found personally that sometimes playlisters that are just curating things very closely, but maybe don't even have the same amount of play push, have done more algorithmic things for us than others that have been in that other system where they're boosting plays by 2,000, but clearly those plays aren't real.
Looking at the data in aggregate, so I think we've now got about 700 or 800 playlisters active on Submit Hub. And one of the biggest red flags is a playlist that can generate 1,000 listeners for your artist. Generally, most of them are hanging somewhere between 20 and 200 listeners per month per song. It's surprisingly low, and I think a lot of artists might be disappointed by about those numbers, but for us, that's actually a sign that it's a lot more legitimate. Many playlisters these days have turned to Instagram advertising, as have artists actually, to try and keep their playlist engaged and growing, because, and part of this is actually Submit Hub pushing them to do that because they see their stats falling on Submit Hub. Stepping back one step backwards, Submit Hub is one of the few websites, if not the only one in the world, that actually shows you how many listeners each playlist is getting. Some of the major labels have access to that information because they can aggregate all of their own artists in the thousands. For example, UMG, I know, has a really good database where they can look up almost any playlist, and odds are there's been 3 or 4 UMG tracks on there in the last month, and so they can get an idea of how many listeners are coming from each one. But from a public-facing side, I think we're pretty much the only ones these days who have up-to-date information, and we're getting that from the artists themselves. So bringing that all back together, what we're seeing is that most of the independent playlisters are only generating between 20 and 200 listeners per month. And anyone who's pulling significantly more than that needs to have a pretty good explanation. So things we're going to look for is one I alluded to earlier, which is good SEO. So the same way SEO works on Google, search engine optimization, you make sure you show up top. You can do the same thing on Spotify. And so if you've got a really good playlist for a niche genre, you might show up there. And so to your point, Adam, some of these small playlists are actually going to do a lot more for you because they've got such a specific niche. If you're targeting a playlister who likes thrash metal and they've only got 10 listeners, that's still going to send an algorithm message to Spotify that says, hey, these 10 people listen to this song, and based on their other listening habits, which all also fall into the thrash metal, we can then deduce that this artist is probably similar to these other artists. And as soon as Spotify can figure out who you're similar to and get a sort of a cohesive picture of that, then they'll start pushing it up their algorithms a bit further. So one risk you have, a lot of these playlists, like the one you mentioned that probably said $5 will chuck you in, you get 10,000 plays overnight. I bet your song was there with like some electro pop next to a punk song, next to a folk song, next to this. And that confuses Spotify's algorithm, because now they see people or bots, whoever, listening to your song alongside all these other ones. And next thing you know, they can't figure out who you sound like. So I think
you're not funneled correctly. Yeah.
You're not funneled correctly. So for us, one of the most obvious ways to spot a legitimate playlister is if they're getting almost no listeners. And then you can go, cool, this guy's legit, he's not faking it. And from there, we are kind of looking for these cohesive, curated listening experiences, because it indicates that the person behind that playlist may not be the best at generating engagement and following, but they kind of know what they're doing and they're putting love into it and they're getting something from there. So I'd be lying if I said all of our playlisters fall into that bucket. There's 800 of them, so there's quite an array. But what I can tell you is that if you come to Submit Hub and you get on these playlists, the odds of you picking up 10,000 listeners in a month are very unlikely. You're going to be walking away with a couple hundred from that placement. And that's one of the ways we can know it's legitimate. We obviously have many other ways of testing.
Ideally, those playlisters, if they fall into kind of the same curation categories and same, similar sort of artists, can feed you into those algorithmic playlisting that's Spotify is really like the basis of why their functionality works for so many users, because you're finding things through that process
naturally and organically.
Totally,
is the key.
I definitely think that. So when Jason, just going back to when you're choosing these curators when they first come into the system, what are those requirements like?
We are looking for at least 1,000 followers on a playlist. That's sort of our minimum threshold. I think we get somewhere around 50 to 60 playlisters per week applying to join, and we probably let in about 10% of those. There's a lot of stuff we're looking at. Where are the listeners coming from of the artists who are in there? Who are the artists that are in the playlist? How long have they been in? What kind of plays are they generating? There's some good tools out there, like a website called isitagoodplaylist.com, which, contrary to its name, doesn't actually tell you if it's a good playlist or not. The real power that they hold is that they're looking at the section on each Spotify's artist playlist where it shows you the discovered on these 5 playlists. And that's actually been expanded by Spotify in the last week or two to be discovered on these 50 playlists. And so you can get an idea with, is it a good playlist? You type in a playlist name, they'll say, cool, these 50 artists are in this playlist, and here's where this playlist ranks in their discovered on. And so you can extract a lot of trends out of that as well in terms of determining whether someone who's new is looking legitimate or not. That's one way you can also identify some of these botted playlists, right? If you start looking at the artists that they're putting in their playlist and then seeing which other playlists those artists are in, if there's some common trend between all of them, really generic names. These days, it's actually really easy to spot a fake playlist, I would say. Anyone who wants to take it seriously is not going to buy fake plays. Like the gig is up in a sense. And they know that to get away with it, I'll say this, maybe I shouldn't say it, but the smartest playlister would be buying 10 fake plays a day. You're just going to fly under the radar. No one's going to notice. It's not going to trigger Spotify's thing. Like, I mean, you guys say Spotify's been cracking down, but that's probably just in reference to, I think in January, they did a big crackdown of about 50,000 artists. We probably had 2 or 3 artists email us and say, this is all your fault. And I asked them to send me a snapshot of their artist dashboard, and it Like, it was very obvious which playlist. It was like, here's your list of 100 playlists you've been on, and at number 1 you got like 50,000 plays in 2 days, and we have nothing to do with that playlist, so it's not us. And I think Spotify was just taking the low-hanging fruit. I would take a different tune and say Spotify is not trying very hard to crack down on this. The whole fervor and ecosystem around it drives usage of Spotify, and so they're sort of at this battle where it's similar to what Twitter had at one point, where they had so many fake users, bots, in their system, but it was part of their shareholder report of how many users they had, and so they were fighting. Could we delete these accounts or not? Because then it's going to look like we want. I think all of this runs through Spotify's API. If you want to fake plays, you have to get an API key, run it through that, and do it. Spotify can monitor this. It's so easy for them to monitor. And another one is, we've got a good contact there. He's the head of communications at Spotify International. And for about a year, we would send him once a month a spreadsheet of about 100 playlists who were charging money for placement, and he would get rid of them. They've stopped doing that. They won't respond anymore. They've ignored all our emails. They're not interested in doing it anymore. They are not cracking down on this. I don't think they care. They'll do it if the optics are in their favor, but otherwise,
so is
just let it slide.
Maybe it's just if you're like you said, if you go and you boost it a small amount of plays, no one's going to know. Has Believe seen that, in the months since, because that was the big crackdown, and I have heard anecdotally over the last few months of a couple artists that have been not our artists, but artists that those artists knew that use some sort of service and boost their plays by 100,000. They've lost their song, but it was huge numbers that were doing it. Has Believe seen that in your ecosystem of your artists doing something that they shouldn't be doing that's affected, their music staying up on the platform?
Statistically, I wouldn't be able to say. I know I've seen just recently, last week, one in our own business unit. So, what does that say? Does that mean that there's really a trend there or not? I mean, with the number of artists and of clients we have, it's bound to happen. There's some that will do whatever. So there's been, but since January, I can't say for that yet. There's been, the message has been sent out for sure. Communication about yes, we're doing this, be more cautious and all that from the DSPs. And but concretely, yeah, you're right. We haven't seen that many situations on our end. And I'm talking just of our business unit, the Canadian one. Maybe in other territories it's something else, but I wouldn't be able to say at this point.
Interesting. Well,
I think it's unfair. I think they went totally the wrong way. They're punishing the artists who in many ways are naive to what they're doing. They don't understand what's going on here. And Spotify goes out and punishes them, and they leave up all these shady promo companies who offer you, pay us $50 and we'll get you 15,000 plays. Those guys are all still cruising, making money, selling their business.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I agree with Nicola. They sent a message, right? So up until then, it was always, oh, be careful, we've heard of this, but I could never actually name an artist who had been removed, and boom, 50,000 of them get docked. Suddenly it's a bit more real. So maybe it helped, but I think that they punished a lot of innocent people who, they make music, right? They're coming into this online thing. They search for how to promote my Spotify. They get these stories that are good, and they think, sure, why not? That sounds great. And they don't understand what they're getting into. And so Spotify, in essence, wiped out many of their careers. Realistically, the vast majority of those weren't actually going to go anywhere.
When you have 60,000 songs getting uploaded every day, a lot of these songs are unfortunately going to go under the radar. But it's true. Like, if you're an artist and you search playlist promotion, a lot of those companies will come to the top because they paid for promotion on Google. So that's the first information they're ever getting about getting their music out there. And they're still all there. You're totally right. If you search that right now, it's still going to be these same companies that put these artists in that situation, that they had their tracks taken down. I guess just to go away from that and go into the kind of the positive, what do you think artists should be, what can an artist do to give them a better chance of getting, either algorithmic playlisting or even eventually getting, in the ears of the main curators at Spotify?
Magic to you.
Who wants to take it?
The marketing tricks. Oh man, where do you start on that one? Every case is different, right? You hear that. I mean, the way I can only talk on the way Believe is structured. When we see any given customer that approaches us, we look where they are, what their goals are, their ambitions, and we try to service them with the right level of services that they need. Some of them come with a totally DIY approach. Their model, we have TuneCore for that. TuneCore is part of the Believe, let's say, structure. So that's your basic entry to the system. You'll do, and within the TuneCore system, there's a whole bunch of tutorials. There's a whole new reward system if you follow some specific classes that you'll benefit from. That'll give you all the little tricks and things that you need to set up your track properly or your releases for the system. Believe distribution would be the level right above that, where we will supply you with some marketing input and guidance, with access to the platform, where within the platform you'll have all the knowledge base and all the other tutorials also that you'll need, and you'll see a whole bunch of information we are requesting prior to the pitch, just to help you prepare your pitch. So that's one thing, plus a whole bunch of other hints and what to do on UGC and on a PR, how to write a proper bio, basic stuff also. And in that's for a certain level or a certain maturity of customers. It could be a label, it could be an artist direct, where we are answering to all the needs that are there. And the final tier in our system is an artist service, which is a label service without using the name of label, because it's an entity that's not really there anymore. That doesn't have, a lot of artists want to be totally independent. They retain and they still control the masters, but we provide a different type of a more hands-on approach, where your setup, it's not that much on you. It's more, you get a team that's more a Believe team that has a deeper look into your project, and it helps you set it up. So we have all these different types of offers. So to answer your question, we would have to look at a specific example to see where it falls, and how do we set it up? What do we offer there? If we're talking what we're doing in Canada currently, which is strictly distribution of artists or labels, we have a place, a whole how to, and a whole calendar of how and deadlines of what you need to supply and what you need to do to maximize, to make sure that once on release date, you have supplied everything available for you to have a decent chance to some attention. Okay, no guarantees, but we do provide that whole environment for the artist. And that, I guess, you need to know, you need to discover once you're into the system.
Right, and that is a good point that we are always pushing artists, is basically the prep before so important now, because once the song is live, there is the clock ticks down really quickly, and if you don't have everything right out of the gate, you can't go back. You can't make the song new again.
No, you need a plan, and you need a rollout. That's what we found out as far as on the editorial side, and the way what they look at, aside and above what the algorithm tells them, or how much they love the song, or what the bio tells them, is what is the plan, what is the rollout, what is it you're proposing here on not a long term, but at least a midterm. What is it, if you're throwing out just a single like that just to test the water, chances are you're not going to get that far. That's what we've been experiencing more and more.
There almost needs to be a consistency of release now. I think coming from an artist where we're playing a singles game. We thought at one point, and rightfully so, that the concept of album was gone, but there is still of that in the system, in the way that people approach and look. Mm-hmm. And a narrative tool, more than it is the main event and driver. Like, all the songs are the drivers, but if you don't have some major thing coming, it's hard to legitimize a project when you have, again, that 60,000 songs a day going up in the system. How do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, there's got to be a concept in the end. There's got to be some kind of vision and something that's proposed to stick out.
Jason?
Hey, teacher. If I remember right, your specific question was, what would you do as an artist to maximize your chances of being recognized by the algorithm and eventually leapfrogging your way into an editorial radar, right?
Yes.
So I do feel like I've got a decent answer there, and it does tie in with a lot of what both of you have said. On your very first release, you're not going to get picked up by the editorial team because, as Nicolas has hinted, they're looking at statistical history to try and determine whether there's potential with this new song. So if you've performed really well on your previous stuff, perhaps this one's going to do well. So they're looking for a bit of a track record there. And so if you're a newcomer, I think one of the strongest strategies you can use, is specifically with playlisting, is to focus on your niche genre, which is something we were chatting about earlier. Mm-hmm. If you're going to go in here, make sure that you're targeting playlisters who have music that's pretty much exactly like yours, because your goal should be to help Spotify figure out who the similar artists are, and then that pumps the algorithm for what gets played next. If someone's listening to that artist, Spotify knows that you sound like them, boom, they're going to line you up next. And so I think the more and more you can work on that snowball, the better you're going to be. The mistake you can make is to go in and just hit as many playlisters as you can with your song in hopes that, oh, cool, if I get picked up by 50 playlists, that's definitely better than getting picked up by 5, which isn't the case necessarily if those 5 are hyper-focused on what you do. The other thing I think that is also important in the context of Spotify playlisting, and again, Nicolas brought this up, the distributors and the labels have their relationships with Spotify's local teams, Spotify Canada, Spotify UK, Spotify France, Spotify whatever. So if you're trying to generate some attention on Spotify, you should also be trying to focus on localizing your listeners, which is quite difficult to do because Spotify is accessible to everyone and it's big. But that's one thing you can look for when you're trying to figure out which playlisters to target. So let's say you're on Submit Hub, you say, I want indie rock. We narrow it down. We say, cool, here's 400 playlisters you like indie rock. From there, you should start looking at, okay, well, where are their listeners coming from? And so we've tried to figure out that information. You can find it on Submit Hub. I wouldn't vouch by it, but it's going to give you a general idea. It will say something like, 43% of their listeners come from the UK, 17% from, Norway, and 23% from the US, whatever it is. You'll see it on Submit Hub right now. And you don't need Submit Hub to do that. You can also go into the artists that they're sharing, look at where their listeners are coming from, try to extract those trends. But we've done it for you guys algorithmically. And so then you can say, cool, I'm a UK artist trying to release in the UK. I'm going to focus on playlists who have artists that sound like me. They're not all over the board. It's very focused, and their listenership is primarily in the UK. So you knock those two down on your first release, you start to build up a little bit of attention. Next release comes out, same thing, same thing. Chances of your second release being picked up by the editorial team, again, quite slim, because your first release would have had to do very well. And with 60,000 songs per day being uploaded, the odds of that are slim, right? But then once you've built that up and you're moving towards your third, your fourth single, now you can say, cool, I've got this track record of growth behind me. You can see Spotify performing better with its algorithms, and ta-da!
It was quite the moment there. Well,
yeah, you okay?
You're surviving. Well, it's one of those, I think, just consistency now and releasing in a relative pattern can be your first guide in all of this, because that way you're going to be able to, almost like you were saying, just build a foundation, have building blocks each time, growing out upon what you've done the last time. Now, the big X factor is always that we're just going to assume that you're releasing really strong music every time.
Yeah, we're going from everybody does. That's the basic, right?
All these 60.
You guys joke, but it is actually really high. That's one of the problems when you're going through Submit Hub. I would say 95% of the songs I get are professionally mixed, professionally done. Everything sounds good, and from there, it's this je ne sais quoi, this magic thing, right? How do you make a hit song? And only a couple people in the world know how to do that consistently, and it's not us. So yeah, it has to be that magic source. It's not as bad though. Like, people think they're doing well, and they are doing well. It's a good song objectively, but subjectively.
Aren't they building some robots to make hits like really soon? No, I thought that was in the making. No?
I think
you look to South Korea for that.
I was just part of a project that this is a little bit off topic, but where an AI took images of empty venues and created music, and then that music was sent to various pods, and one of the pods had someone from Sum 41, and another one had someone from AWOL Nation, and in the end it had myself and Tara Lightfoot and Luke from the Dirty Nil, and we created out of this AI thing as an experiment. It was totally bonkers to work that way, but anyways, I digress. I don't want to get into that too much. Jason, I just wanted to go off of kind of what you were saying and go back into the platform. So someone has, you're saying 95% of the music is good, and I totally believe that. I think it's easier now to make really quality music than ever before, and getting that extra thing, is that magic quality is still the mystery and why music is amazing. How, if you're one of those artists, when you're coming in that platform, you have good music, what things should they be doing that's going to, outside of the music, maybe separate them a little bit from everybody else? Is there anything that they can be doing on the platform that's going to help there?
On Submit Hub specifically, if that's your question, or on Spotify?
Let's go with Submit Hub specifically.
There isn't an easy answer. The thing with Submit Hub is that we do place most of the emphasis on the song itself. So when a song comes through for the curator, or playlister, blogger, whoever to listen to, it's all packaged consistently. Every song is the same. There isn't much chance for you to uniquely identify yourself or stand out. It's that consistency which makes it usable for people. So it's the song.
And I guess it's just like anything. Like, now you're getting a lot of music, you're listening to a lot of music at once if you're a curator, and that music can blend together, and there's no context to that music. So I guess that was what I was asking. Is there a way to give better context, so someone, when they start listening to your song, they're already sort of in it, because they know what they're to expect?
Quick pitch, which you've seen on Submit Hub. It's this little bit of info that you fill out when you submit your song. I've placed a lot more prominence on that in the last couple of weeks, actually. I think it gives you 200 characters. It's almost like a little tweet to put your message across. Obviously, we provide things like artist profiles, a spot to put in your bio, your press release, all of that type of stuff. But the curator really has to dig into that if they like a song. It's all about that first impression still of the music itself. And that's really where we're placing the emphasis. You can lead with YouTube as your main source of streaming, in which case it will play a video, and that can help add something additional to it. So if you're looking for a small leg up to showcase your unique approach or whatever it is you do stylistically, using YouTube as your primary source can help. But I think you'll find that, you know, while I say 95% of the songs are good, most people aren't at that next level of actually crafting a good music video. So that could be one thing that does differentiate people, is having something high quality there. Or it doesn't even have to be high quality. It just needs to move you, right, as it accompanies the song.
I think aesthetic fit is more important than spending big dollars on a visual. Often it's how everything kind of comes together for you as an artist on multiple levels.
Invest time also on your in your artist profile, on your the Spotify for Artists, your Apple for Artists. There's time to be spent there. There's tools there. You can target where you want to be. You can identify what your moods, what the sounds on, and that's crucial when you're setting up. And what we're seeing, that a lot of artists are just not doing that groundwork. Maybe because they're not aware of it, or they're just not, or they're relying on somebody else to do it. But if you're in a mood, when you're in a mode of working on a DIY side of things, and that's your approach, go all the way. Just don't put music up there, and which that's what we're seeing. And just pray for the best. That's not. You have all of the artists have access to that. They can go into the Spotify for Artists and do their thing. You know, in our case, in some cases, and some labels and some artists ask us to do it, but generally, I think it's better if the artist does it. They'll know who they want to relate to and what they're targeting. I think initially, strong believer that it's got to come from the source. It's got to come from them, that vision, or that where they want to go.
I found it really interesting. I watched the last masterclass thing that Spotify put together around their platform and Spotify for Artists, and I thought they would go to a deeper level, but basically all they were talking about was these general things. Have a bio. General thing. Add more photos.
Yeah, that you think that it should be there, but you'd be surprised. Even on our side, the number of labels or artists that just haven't done that basic work, that don't have and big names that just don't. It's just not up to date. The tour dates are out there. The bio's not up there, and it's not that uncommon. Sadly there's a lot like that. So can go only as far as others want to go. Sometimes.
Totally, yeah. Taking that next step, I think it separates you from the artists that aren't. So we've been talking for a while, so I think maybe one last question, and this will be maybe a little bit crystal ball-y, and maybe do either of you have a sense of where streaming might be headed? Like where you think, now that it's become such an integrated part of releasing music, do you have any ideas on what an artist should be doing to maybe stay ahead of the curve, or even just staying on the curve?
I got an idea of where the market is going. That's that's stats and information that we have. What we're seeing is that in the next 10 years, the revenues for the music industry will be 85% will be coming from streaming. That's the information. That's what we know. That's the trend. That's what's happening. So there's growth, a lot of growth in the streaming. That's where we're invested in. how you get there, how you get your share, how you do your thing and how you pull it out there. That's marketing strategy. That's what's in the recipes, and not that much inside it. I'm afraid I could.
But it again goes back to long-term thinking. You know, that you're not just releasing this one track that all of a sudden is going to make you, you know, necessarily the next huge star. It's about, you know, growing organically over a long period of time.
Yeah, and that the revenues are going to be there. The market is still. I mean, some markets are very close to full maturity, but worldwide, there's still a lot of shares to be that are up for grabs. 85% is the number that will be coming from streaming at the end.
Wow. Do you have anything to add, Jason?
Crystal ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, the crystal ball, man.
I think that there are some answers that can be extracted by looking at humans and how we age. As we get older, we get more established in our behaviors and our listening patterns specifically. We know what we like and we tend to stick to it. Chances are you're not branching out into things like hyperpop or K-pop or many of these newer genres if you're in your 40s or your 50s. So what we are doing at Submit Hub to make sure that we're still going to be around in 10 years, Lord knows if we will, is to look at where the group of people who are passionate about discovering music are actually doing it. And I think if you look at sort of the phases of human development, it's often that age somewhere between 16 and 25 when you're probably discovering the most about who you are and defining what your characteristics are. I mean, that's when a lot of people went through, at least in my generation, the emo phase. There was the hardcore phase. There's all these different things you're going through to identify with music. And so there's a lot of impressionable individuals there who are trying to find their identity. And that demographic, I think, is a really interesting one to look at in terms of music discoverability and who you should be targeting as a new artist, assuming, of course, that your genre is something they might like. But they're the group that's most interested in discovering new things. And they're sponges, right? They're taking it up. And of course, they're sharing it with other people, and it becomes a big part of their identity to sort of be someone cool who's finding all the best artists. I mean, the three of us presumably have all been there. Like, you're making mixtapes for your friends. I assume we were all kind of the ones who were more into the music and less passive about it. We were actively in it. And that becomes a part of your identity. So what I'm trying to say is TikTok is kind of where it's at right now. If you look at that group of 16 to 25 and where they're consuming their media, they're currently doing it on TikTok and Instagram. And if we want to crystal ball this and say, okay, where are things going to be in 10 years? I think that age group is probably one of the best ones to keep an eye on, especially from a promo and marketing standpoint, because the trend of where they're consuming their media is probably going to be one of the best audiences for targeting in terms of music discoverability. So yeah, we're right now doing a big expansion. You know, I feel like we've got the Spotify stuff on lockdown, but we're not seeing massive growth there. We already have 800 playlists. Maybe we'll hit 1,000. I mean, it's like Hype Machine never really passed 1,000 blogs. They were still powerful and relevant in their time, but now we're looking for that next growth one. So for us, the crystal ball is to think about where we were and when we were most interested in actually going out and discovering stuff. So yeah, right now I think it's TikTok, and it is really, it can be quite powerful for music. Even if you're one of these small artists, a really cool advantage I think of TikTok is that you're getting a bunch of people to make mini music videos for you. And even if it doesn't blow up, you can just go visit your song and see a collection of 30 or 40 like mini music videos, which to Nicolas' point, you then want to take as part of your EPK, your press kit or whatever, when you're going to go dump it on a label and editorial, you know, Spotify playlist, or this is part of your arsenal to show how well your song's been performing. So yeah, crystal ball, TikTok.
No, I think that's, yeah, TikTok. And it's aging
in
up.
the West. In the West.
Yeah. It's one of those things where there's more and more niches happening there. It's not just you don't have to just be making pop music now for it to work on that platform. And we've been seeing, artists of all different genres really getting a foothold there and it making a big difference. And Jason, as you're saying, like that content buildup that happens there, artists need more content than ever. It's absurd how much content we're asking them to create for us to make things happen. But TikTok can be this echo chamber that keeps bringing you things afterwards. Well, thank you both. I think that's a good place to stop and
Dinner time.
the discussion. And yeah, you can have some dinner. We can have some lunch, maybe. Maybe lunch. I appreciate you both giving some time here and talking. And hopefully this was insightful.
Pleasure.
Thank you. It was fun.